Hey, welcome on guys. My name is B Flat and we're here with another guide, another trick, another tutorial, another character build in general. Today we are working on Zanek the Hedgehog, or Zanek the Kill Hog, whatever you want to call him. We're calling him Zanek because it's a twist on Zane and Sonic the Hedgehog, because there's a lot of movement speed that is involved with this build. First the build, then it in action, and then we'll show you guys just exactly what this can do. So this is kind of my variation on Kill Zane and what I would consider a quote-unquote god build for Kill Zane. This is what we got lined up for you. So I've been using the Corrosive Cutsman for more single-target bossing, so such as like Agonizer, Wotan, etc, etc. It has, while Sentinel is active, gain 100% damage on bonus cryo. All my weapons have this annoyance. I recently added the lob since the buff that came to it. This one is a shock with the same anoint. This does major damage, and there's also a few skills that can make this even more ridiculous than it already is by itself. We'll get into that in just a little bit. I use the Maggie. This is for single target shooting, extra projectiles, and a few skills that'll make this thing shine. I'll show you those skills in just a little bit as well. Also has the cryo sentinel damage. It's also perfect roll. This thing is a absolute beast. And then finally, the main weapon that we're using for Kill Chain Zane is the redistributor. This is shock, so it melts shields, and it also has the cryo damage as well. There's a few things that will make this ridiculous regarding its every 7th shot is amped ability. We'll get into that in just a second. Into some of the speed stuff, we have the transformer. We get to negate a shock damage to us. We heal it instead. And while Sentinel is active, our movement speed is increased by 15%. I use the recurring hex. The reason why we do this is going to be combined with a skill. We'll get into that in just a little bit. It is radiation, but the anoint is the important part about this. Snowdrift Victory Rush. I use this primarily for movement speed. Its passive ability, which is triggering Victory Rush, we get 18% movement speed and damage for an entire minute. The passives on this are also really good for mag size and movement speed. And finally, one of the most ridiculous comms that I've probably ever seen, the Seeing Dead, absolutely busted ability. We'll get into the reason why this is really good in just a second. However, it rolls with weapon damage, SMG damage, and Hyperion crit, or as I like to call it, the redistributor fan service. Alright, so let's get into the skill trees, and then we'll get this build right into action. We'll cross-reference why our abilities with certain gear are going to be really good. So I use Adrenaline for action skill cooldown rate. Every time that our shield is up, the higher percentage that it goes. Highest is 35%. I use Brain Freeze. Whenever there's a critical hit, we can slow an enemy up to a chance to freezing them, slowing them down, and gaining bonus effects. Confident Competence, this one is done damage and accuracy. The amount of shield that we have, the more percent that is full, the greater the bonus. 35% max done damage if we're at max. The augments that I use in this tree is Charged Relay. So whenever Zane or an ally touches a barrier, they gain increased movement speed and reload speed. Movement speed is a primary one with this. And then I use All-Rounder so that we can have an entire dome with our shield so that we don't get attacks from behind or anything like that. Into the red tree, we don't do a lot in red tree either. Synchronicity, we max this out for gun damage per action skill that we have. If we have both our barrier and our drone out, we do 40% extra gun damage. I threw the extra levels into borrowed time from 50 to 53. Action skill duration is increased by a little bit for every active action skill. We have Donnybrook as a kill skill. Because it's 8 out of 5 due to our Seeing Dead comm, I only have 3 in this normally, but Seeing Dead, the comm that we rolled, has a +5 into it, so this is an 8 out of 5. Kill skill, gun damage goes up by 36%, and our health regen is 6% of missing health per second, last 15 seconds. And finally, where the build all comes together, the blue tree. Violent speed and violent momentum are maxed out. The reason why we do this, in conjunction with all of our other movement speed stuff, this is a kill skill. Our movement speed is increased by 30%. However, this effect stacks twice, so that is 60%, last 15 seconds. Violent momentum, my gun damage is increased while moving. The quicker that I move, the more gun bonus that I have. 20% gun damage is just normal walking speed. So if we're increasing our movement speed by 60%, plus the Sentinel with 15%, our 9% extra movement with the Victory Rush, we have a ton of movement speed and a ton of damage while we're doing this. Absolutely ridiculous. I put a little bit of a points into Cool Hand. It's a kill steal. You get increased reload speed. It stacks twice as well. Salvation, this is going to be kind of our it's our lifesteal kill steal, so that whenever we do gun damage, we heal. It also includes the chain from the redistributor. Drone delivery. Now this is what happens with my grenade. Whenever I throw out Sentinel, he will occasionally drop a grenade based on my grenade mod. Now whenever drone throws out a nade, that nade's anointment applies. So on grenade thrown, whenever Sentinel throws this nade out, weapon, grenade, and action skill damage are increased by 25% for 6 seconds, just for having drone out. I also use Death Follows Close. All of Zane's kill steals and increase effects and duration so that they last longer, and we have more of a bonus as well. Violent Violence. Killing an enemy, Zane gains increased fire rate for a few seconds. It stacks twice. Having that fire rate is really good for things like the lob, so that we can shoot it faster. Redistributor gets to shoot off faster. Maggie, extra shots from it. And they can all go into playing dirty as well. Extra projectiles. So I have tested this on stream. If I use the extra projectiles and I have it active, the lob will not shoot out 3 magical bursts. The lob will actually shoot out anywhere between 4 to 6 magical bursts. If you thought 3 was ridiculous from this thing before, imagine nearly doubling it. Absolutely amazing. Good Misfortune. This is where all your kill steals will stay active forever. Kill steal, killing an enemy increases Zane's action skill duration. It goes up to 18% per every time that it activates. I use Bad Dose with my Sentinel. It is a beam of radiation that weakens enemies and buffs me. It gives me movement speed and it gives me fire rate per enemy that it hits. I also use Winter's Drone. My Sentinel primary weapons turn to cryo damage so that I can have a chance of freezing enemies. So that is the skill trees. That's the weapons and items. Let's put this into action, shall we? Show you a little bit about what this build can do. From what I've seen, this thing can do true takedown mode solo with ease. It kind of sleeps through it. You don't really take any damage. You do it really quickly. Enemies don't really threaten you. There's not a lot that goes wrong with this. The only time you're really taking damage is if you take melee damage through your barrier, or if there's a puddle on the ground of elemental damage, in which case a dot applies and then kills you. That is the only time that I've ever been downed. Otherwise, we can just run over these turret guys to get the first gate open. Absolutely no problems. This is all our movement speed combined together. The faster that we move, the more damage that we do. It's absolutely ridiculous. We can stare at all these enemies. They're not going to do a single chunk of damage unless they walk up and punch me. Stormtrucker Heavyweight, we're still using shock damage and they're getting run over still. He got frozen with brain freeze there. Now there's one little pattern that you guys might be noticing. I don't know if you guys have, because I haven't explained it, but this is what I was saving for. The redistributor, every 7th shot is amped. Amped shots chain to nearby enemies. Every 7th shot that's going through, it is not amped. The way that we work with barrier, every single shot is amped when we shoot through barrier. Not every 7th shot, every singular bullet that goes through is amped. Every single time that it's amped, it chains. So because we're shooting through barrier, we're taking that 7th shot to every single bullet that fires. Here's my proof. I need an enemy, actually. I need an enemy that I can chain to. So give me 1 second to be able to prove that. My apologies. I need an enemy that I can chain to. These two over here. Watch. See? I shot once. It's chaining. I'm shooting singular shots here. And it's chaining. So long as barrier's up, it's chaining to him. Now we're chaining to him. It's ridiculous how this works. I don't know if this is intentional or not. If, like, shooting through a barrier, everything is supposed to be amped. But, it's what I've noticed by using Kill Zane. Single target corrosion damage. Corrosion and cryo will just make short work of Kraken. As you can see, our shield and HP has not changed this entire trial. This is Mayhem 4, and this is also true takedown mode. So this is the 4-player difficulty. At the moment, at time of recording, this is the hardest difficulty that the game provides and has, and the hardest challenge that the game also has as well. We're taking 0 damage. Absolutely nothing. We are taking 0 damage. I have tested this out on stream. Valkyries don't do any damage. The same goes for Wotan. Wotan doesn't do anything. In fact, every single... That's a really good Krakatoa. That's a very good Krakatoa. Hello. Hello, recording. I've already had one previously, but I think that's a max damage roll. Hello, world drop. We're gonna call that YouTube recording luck. I'll take it. So now our barrier ran out because we don't have any kill skills active, but with borrowed time, barrier's gonna come back very, very quickly, so you don't have to really worry about that. A takedown can pretty well go anywhere between 8 to 13, 14 minutes. Depends on how fast you really want to speed through it. The only threat in this area is the launch pods, or whatever you want to call them, knocking you off the edge, or if Valkyries walk up and do a ton of melee damage out of nowhere. Now we talked about the amp damage. Coming through. This is also including the lob amp damage. The lob is also getting amp damage through the barrier. I have tested this out on stream as well. I tested a amp shield while barrier was up, so I wanted to see if amp could stack on top of amp to see if we can make it more ridiculous. Amp does not stack with amp. Amp is just amp by itself. So if you're wondering about that, amp does not stack with amp. I have tried it. Fortunately, didn't work. My test specifically was with the ohm shield, if you were all wondering. Now this could be a little bit skewed and a little wrong because I did this on the test dummy in Sanctuary. Maybe it works on actual enemies in the game, because I know that the test dummy works a little bit differently than other enemies in the game. Feel free to test it out if you try this build. Feel free to test it out and let me know if amp can stack on top of amp, because I would be very, very curious about that, and I would 100% want to cover it. Making absolute short work of Valkyries here. They're not really going to do anything and have any threats. Not gonna have any threats. Now all the Valkyries are gonna come down. Here's the magic of all 3 Valkyries being in the arena at once. Watch this. Look at that damage. When you get down to 1, you can switch over to the Cutsman and just run them over. The redistributor is not going to do a lot of damage on paper when it comes to just single target damage. It's entirely there for chaining. It is entirely there for chaining. If you don't have a chain, it's just going to do normal SMG damage, because you're not doing chains, you're not doing amp damage, you're not doing anything ridiculous with it. You're just doing single target damage. All right, so this is one of my favorite parts of this raid. This really shows the intensity and integrity of the build. Watch this. So we're gonna go and run down to the very end of the bridge because we want all these enemies. We want to aggro and pull every single enemy on the map in this area. Generally, a lot of people like to take the bridge very, very slowly. They like to take their time, peg off the death spheres. Very, very reasonable. Very understandable to do that. When we do this kill steal chain Zane, Zanek the Hedgehog, whatever you want to call this, this hybrid. There's a foundation of kill skill and chain Zane for sure, but it works a little differently than some. It's ridiculous. You kill every single enemy just by unloading a clip of the redistributor. You don't really have any struggles. You don't take any damage from projectiles. The only thing you have to worry about is these heavyweights coming up and falcon punching you. Even then, they're not going to do any major damage worth mentioning. And that's the bridge. That's the entire bridge. Very end of the raid, you gotta knock out these boys. There are no problems either. Absolutely not a problem. The lob can make short work of these guys. They're not gonna do anything. Nice and perfect. Fun little fact about Wotan, if you have your action skill active or any kill skills going, during that cutscene, they do expire. They do have, I guess, diminishing returns, if you want to be technical about it. The duration will start to expire, so make sure you skip that cutscene. I learned that the hard way, and I died when I had barrier expire. I didn't think it activated through the cutscene, but it totally does. Single target damage to Wotan is ideal here. So we use our Cutsman just to shred him off. There is one thing that I would consider very threatening in this area. As soon as we get to it, I'll let you guys know. We're not quite there yet. We need to wait until Wotan separates and splits into two. Alright, let's lower his shield a little bit. Perfect. Now, here's another thing I want to show you guys. So the redistributor, if you shoot an enemy outside of Wotan's shields, they can chain through Wotan's shields and still damage him without going up the elevator. There's only a few ways that you could do this. Going through Wotan's shields, I believe, as of right now, there's the redistributor with the chains that I just showed you guys. There's the wagon wheel with its normal special ability. And there's the Nukem, I believe, also goes through. Now that's the threat that I was talking about. That goes through your shields. These stingers here, their barrage of missiles, for some reason, can go through your shield. They are a projectile. They're totally a projectile. And the Zane's shield describes that all projectiles get blocked, but they don't. Once we get rid of Wotan's better half, that would be my big recommendation, is get rid of Wotan's better half. The flying one. Everything else becomes a cakewalk because Wotan himself can't do any damage at all. You kind of just look at him. Occasionally, as you saw there, I guess I kind of lied. He can find a spot that that can go through. There are areas in your shield that still, for some reason, don't do what they're supposed to do. The bottom of the feet, that'll always go through because there's no shield there. And I noticed that for some reason the top of the dome also has an opportunity to take shots, which is what would explain the stingers and that random shot that I took from Wotan there. But that's the build. You should be able to just sleep through the raid. You can go through the hardest difficulty. It's not going to be a problem. I showed you the build, showed you the skill tree, the items that I'm using. I am working on save files, meaning that if you guys are on PC, you could be able to just download this build directly. I don't have an approximate date for when that's coming. I want to make sure I do it all properly first, so that every single build that you guys see on this channel will have a potential to be downloaded if you don't want to farm for the gear. I'm going to be first posting them in Discord, so Discord is going to have priority. I'll make sure to put a invite link in the description. If you guys don't know already, I do stream this game 4 days a week. I stream it from Tuesdays to Fridays. Saturdays is my variety style stream. Every single time you can expect me to be live at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard start time. I really dedicate to the Borderlands series, so if you're looking for builds, tricks, and guides, I'm one of your go-tos. So I would love to see you guys out there, and until I see you guys on another video, another build, another trick, another guide, my name is Flattened, and I'm signing on out of here. Take care, guys.